I'm Brianna McHenry.
And I'm Stephanie Della Porta, and we are your guides for the When in Bloom podcast.
Join us weekly as we include tips, tricks, and alignment tools that support us on our personal journeys,
bringing you back to the knowing that you have all that you need within you to bloom.
Hello, friends. Happy Monday, or whenever you are listening to this. I hope you are having a beautiful day, and we are so honored to have you share in this conversation about our experiences with past lives. In today's episode, we talk a little bit about time, our understanding of the soul, in some ways we have discovered our past lives, and working with the gifts that we have within ourselves from these lives. We also talk a little bit about identifying with being a starseed and some galactic connections we've discovered. I really hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, feel free to reach out to us and let us know your thoughts, comments, or if you have any questions. Let's talk about our souls.
Which I don't think most people think about when they think about past lives, kind of what your soul is and really where you come from and why you're even experiencing all of these lives. For me, the soul is really the essence of source. And it's like we're all fragments of this oneness, and we're all just trying to kind of learn the wholeness of the universe.
I see source pretty much the same way, that we're all fragments of the divine expressing or experiencing itself through different lenses or mirrors, since we're all mirrors for each other.
A lot of times people will come to me and kind of ask, why am I experiencing a hardship? And it's really a good reminder that the reason why we experience lack or a hardship is so we can experience the opposite part of that spectrum. So in all of these past lives and just your future lives and your current lives, that's what your soul is trying to understand. Really, the fullness and the wholeness of the universe. And as I was saying that, I got a download that actually, if you think about how there's like so many different timelines and different dimensions and different versions of yourself, it's because we're all one. So like you are a different version of me. And so I have your experience like literally in me.
Yes, because essentially all of our origination points is source. That's where we all start. That's where we all begin. And essentially that's where we'll all end.
Mm-hmm.
So time, what does time even mean? What does that word even mean? This word that we use in this earthly realm, this three-dimensional realm, to define, what do we define it as? I don't even know. How do you define time?
Time is made up. Like, it's not like when you're like, how do you define time? You don't.
I'm like, how do you define?
Yeah, it's a made up concept. Like, it's funny because I know that we perceive, not you and I, like in our human experience, we usually perceive time as linear. Like we have a timeline, but really everything is happening at the same time. Ashley Wood has a really great analogy for the representation of time, where she talks about taking a ceramic plate and imagine that you drop it on the floor and it shatters in a bunch of different pieces. All of those pieces are different moments in time, but they're all happening at the same exact time.
Exactly. So that would mean that technically there really is no past, present, or future, because it's all happening at the same, there's that word again, time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which makes doing past life work, which is so funny, but it's what makes doing past life work so powerful, because by changing your past lives, you can change your current life and your future lives as well.
I love that. I actually channeled a painting recently about time. And basically it's an hourglass that has stars as the sands of time, and it's broken on the ground and on top of this mound of sand. And the stars, basically I was shown a hand just throwing the sand, these stars back up in the sky, just to kind of show that time is infinite. Time on Earth is a linear measurement, but there's always more than one way to measure something. Look at how on Earth we measure things in different ways. We have kilometers, we have miles, we have meters, we have centimeters and inches and millimeters. Even in baking, in cooking, there's so many different measurements across the planet. So in the same way, it's measured differently in different dimensions. So time itself has no physical container. It's infinite. There's really no such thing. It's just dimensions of time. So these different pieces of yourself, if you think of yourself as that plate, are just existing. They're still existing. Just because it's broken doesn't mean that it just goes away. It's still there. It's still in pieces. It's still fragments. And these fragments of yourself are existing in different dimensions, which I think we will definitely get into in a little bit more detail as we begin to talk about our own experiences with past lives.
Steph, do you have any stories about how you discovered your past lives?
Okay. Well, first, my soul is very old and has lived many, many lives across the multiverse. So for the purpose of this episode, I'm only going to speak of a few that have and are influencing my current life here. As we were talking about earlier, how your past life, and we say past life in quotations because it's not really in the past, is actually influencing now. So I guess I'll start with, especially because in last week's episode, I spoke of having one of my first incarnations in the angelic realm. So I had a reading, my first ever intuitive reading from a beautiful soul named Sarah Lucetti, who I'm very lucky now that I can call her a really good friend. And so I guess to go back a little bit before that, the reason I decided to have an intuitive reading was because around the beginning of April in 2020, this was right after I began to experience the most unpleasant physical symptoms from energetically upgrading, also known as ascension. And obviously I didn't know what that word meant at the time, and we'll go into that in a different episode. But I hadn't taken any intuitive or psychic courses prior to this, and I was searching for answers as to what was happening to me and more clarification on my path. So in that reading, she had said there was a lot of angelic presence and fairy energy with me. So then I'll fast forward to around September in 2020. I came across someone on YouTube totally by accident, but now we know there really is no such thing as accidents. It's all in the right timing, who I actually felt called to have an Akashic Records reading with. Her name's Tiffany Tin. And this woman knew nothing about me, none of my prior readings, didn't know anything about my reading with Sarah, none of my human history, nothing. So we spoke for the first time in that reading. And when she started to read my records, being obsessed with finding out my soul's origin, I asked for where my soul was from. And the galactic beings that spoke through her told me when my soul was first created through Source, which I just want to point out is all of our origination point, because we already spoke of it. Everything and everyone is just a fragment of Source. There was a golden light that first began to expand into the multiverse, and then another light of magenta color began to swirl and join this golden light. And together that created my soul's consciousness, which also brings me back to last week's episode of how the element of light itself is a guide for me on this earth as I remember my multidimensionality, because that's also where I first started. So my soul's consciousness began to traverse into the different realms in this multiverse. And this is where the synchronicities started to add up. So the beings told me that I first arrived in a realm that is part of the angelic kingdom. And I began as a gentle light particle, understanding the cosmic consciousness through light, speed, and sound. And then I began to take form into a fae being, so a fairy being. In that lifetime, I was an angelic fae, born out of a flower. I was actually an angel of flowers. They told me I was an angel of beauty. Hearing this actually helped me understand why I hold a strong inner desire to create beauty in my surroundings, especially with my art. So when I heard this, not only did it resonate, but I actually looked into my journal later, and this is why it's very important to write everything down. And I realized that it confirmed the first reading I ever had with Sarah. I mean, honestly, what are the chances? They even went on to share that I learned of the spectrum of light that surrounds flowers, which also explains why I've been able to see auras around light since I was a child, which I also mentioned in last week's episode. And the detail that I was given about this life and all the other lives that I won't get into right now that they told me about in that reading was honestly incredible. There was such a resonance within me. And also, I have to mention this, the galactic beings also mentioned that Archangel Jophiel was my teacher in this realm as well. And no word of a lie, the first archangel I intentionally chose to connect with was her. And the message she gave me was literally about beauty. It mirrored the reading that I had with both Sarah and Tiffany Tin. Like, what are the chances?
That is amazing. I love how that happens. I also really love how you mentioned again how important journaling is, because last night in one of my readings that someone was giving to me, she was like, you really need to start journaling. And then the day before, when I was connecting for myself, they were like, girl, buy yourself a journal. Like, you're going to fill it up. So this is like an example of how you can be reminded that you're not acting on your messages and you need to.
That's exactly it. I love having a record of it because sometimes I think I'm going to remember these readings, but sometimes you're just so in that energy as it's happening. You don't. You're on such a high, vibrational high that you come out of the reading thinking, what did she say again? Oh no. Well, wait, where am I from? Like, what was my life?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm such a big advocate for journaling. And you know this because I have so many journals and I write everything down. I have a journal for everything. And this is why it is just so important, because you can go back to it and like it's almost like being able to fact check these different readings, including your own channelings and the own messages that you get.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to start doing it. I swear, guys. I wonder if I was with you in your fairy past life.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised because you seem to show up in a lot of my, my past lives, which is actually evidently are also, you're also in my present life, which is all happening at the same time. So
Mm-hmm. What I do a lot of times to figure out past lives, and what I did with Steph, is I do the connection process, which we've been sharing, where we breathe into our heart and we ground. And I know we've shared a few different ways to do it. So do whatever is best for you. But that's what we set the intention as, to see a past life that we shared. So after you connect and you're in that space where you're grounded and fully receiving and connected with source or the divine, universe, God, your guides, whoever you want to talk to, your light being friends, that's when you can ask them. Normally I ask, if I'm in a situation, is this connected to a past life? So for me, when I was trying to find the connection that Steph and I had, I really think I just asked what our past life connection is. I don't think I asked like a deep question. And that was kind of the first experience with us figuring out that we have a past life or two. And then when we did figure that out, we decided to do a guided meditation together. And then we both saw 2 other past lives that we shared together.
yes. And that was how we did that. And I think it was actually pretty cool because we've done our own past life inquiries on our own. But doing it together was an entirely different experience. So if you think you share a past life with someone and and the other person is also open to discovering what that may be, it's a really fun experience. And it's actually very expansive too. I found was to go into a meditation together and to see if you see the same things. I think we each had a journal with us and we were kind of writing things down as we saw them. And so I was taking notes as well. And then we were comparing them after.
Mm-hmm. And the past lives that we saw were similar. Like, we both had the feeling of being sisters.
Yes.
But in one life, I saw we were both males. But then in the life that Steph saw, she saw females. But our lives, the two separate ones that we saw, like coincide with each other, and they make sense. It was like the past life that I saw was that we had to choose. We were basically brothers, and one of us had to choose to stay and one of us had to choose to go. And so we were really being separated. And then in the life that Steph saw, we were sisters working together. And so it was like we needed to experience that contrast of that life where we needed to be forced apart to be able to experience that life where we could be fully together.
And it's so interesting that we found each other in this current life because we wanted to delve deeper into our gifts. Me and Brianna actually found each other doing an intuitive course. So, and we ended up scheduling a practice reading together. So it's incredible the different ways that, as we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, your past kind of bleeds into your present. It's never really in your past.
Yes, I totally agree.
Also, it's so interesting too that back in September of last year as well, I had a memory. It was a visualization when I was meditating, and I was asking about one of my past lives in Atlantis, and it was in the time of Atlantis, and I was sending my dragon friend leveling away to save himself, and our heads were against each other and pretty much third eye to third eye, and I was saying goodbye. And then he didn't want to leave me, but I wanted him to live. So I kept telling him like this is the way it had to be. And then I told him I would see him again in another life, and he flew off. And then I stood in a circle around one of the crystal columns with other beings. I'm pretty sure one of them was Brianna, as well as we all took in the energy of the crystal to save it before Atlantis fell to its depths. And the energy from this crystal went into my hands, feet, and my heart, which is so interesting because I have a lot of energy within my hands in this life, so much so that they vibrate a lot and they pulse, and there's a lot of heat in them, and I use them pretty much for everything. My hands are my wands, basically. And that's also what Sarah had told me in a reading. And afterwards, in this vision, we told each other that we would find each other one again, just as the land was engulfed in water. And then I remember like I saw myself basically letting the ocean take me under. And I had luminescent, very light green tinted skin, and I had large eyes and white sort of platinum blonde, long hair. And then this whole time that I was watching this scene play out in my mind, I experienced wave after wave of chills all over my body. And that's how I knew it was more than just a fantasy or a daydream. Is I got so emotional watching this scene in my mind that I felt tears coming down my face. And I don't normally get like that when I receive visions or when I'm daydreaming or when I'm using my imagination. So it was a memory that was being shown to me. And I remember telling you, Brianna, right after, I'm pretty sure it was literally right after I sent you a voice message telling you what happened. Mm-hmm. And you responded with,
I think I was there. Right. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Love that.
I know you told me this. We talked about this months and months and months ago, and obviously I watch a lot of Disney movies now. Okay, literally you like described like a very similar like story to Raya and the Last Dragon.
Are you serious? I've never heard that movie.
Well, you had this vision before it even came out.
That's true. Oh,
yeah.
Wait, so when did it come out?
Like a couple months ago, March. Came out in March.
Yeah, I had this in September 2020. Yeah. I think I'm looking in my journal now. September 9th.
Yeah, it's all about like we've only watched it a couple times, but it like dragons literally make a crystal and then they all like leave and like put magic into a crystal, and the crystal is like protecting like the world or like the land.
I love that. And that's what it was, because Atlantis was falling. Certain beings, us being one of them, had to kind of transfer the knowledge from the crystal into us, knowing that it would be in our energetic field. So whenever we reincarnated again on the earth, we'd be able to ground and anchor that energy again, no matter what body we were in, because it was part of our etheric DNA, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's insane how much information we can hold within ourselves from past lives. Like, it is a huge amount of information that is just dying to get out of us.
But see, this goes back again. This is why it's so important to journal, because look, I had the date down. I wouldn't have even known this. I would have just thought, if I didn't remember when I saw this vision, when I channeled it, I would have just assumed, oh, it's from a movie or something. I wouldn't have realized that I had seen this way before this movie even came out. So this is what I mean. It's so important to journal. And I'd also say for yourself, if you're wondering, well, how do I know that it's not just my imagination? Once again, imagination is the doorway to the ethereal realm. And I would also say, pay attention to how you feel, because the emotions that I felt were real. I can't even describe it. I've never experienced something like that before. So it was just, even now, I don't even know how to talk about it, because it was just so real to me, because I could physically feel the emotions of saying goodbye to my dragon and then saying goodbye and seeing goodbye to all of these other beings that pretty much were helping me save the world or save the energy of Atlantis, from the crystal columns, and allowing myself to die, to knowing that I would come back and we would all see each other again in different bodies at a different time of the world. I mean, look at now, everything since 2020. It's kind of it's really wild that me and you found each other during this time. As I said at the beginning, there's no such thing as accidents, and there's no such thing as coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. And really as simple as that.
And if you see something in a movie, or if you read something in a book, and then a couple days later you go and you're meditating and you get a similar message, the reason why you read it in that book or why you saw it in that movie is so you could receive that message. So it's not a coincidence that you watched it, you got the information, and then a couple of days later you received it. You needed that information before so you could receive the message.
I'm throwing up a hands emoji right now. Going, yeah. So moving on from Atlantis, let's get into a little bit more of galactic past lives, because I know that a lot of people are interested in that. There's such a big, the interest for aliens and galactic beings and interdimensional beings has really, really grown, especially since last year. So do you know any of yours?
Yeah. This is for all my starseed friends.
Yeah.
Who really feel like, what am I doing here? Like, am I really just living on a rock? Living by other people's rules. Last year, I was really identifying with that word starseed, especially because it was going around a lot. It was new. You could take the starseed quizzes to find out what kind of starseed you were. And I did that a lot, I think. But one of the things that really hit home for me from being a starseed is that feeling that you're never home. I've really been cultivating and nurturing a feeling of home in my life now since I've started all of this. But my whole life, I just never felt welcomed or wanted. I never fit in. I never was, I just never understood the human experience. I always knew that there was something bigger and just more than what we're told there is here. Like you, Steph, I was really, really into where my soul is from. And more specifically, what kind of starseed am I?
Yes.
And I was just too lazy to have someone do a reading for me. And I think I was also really determined to kind of figure it out on my own now that I was starting to connect and get messages for myself. And one night I was sitting out on our balcony, because in the summer I usually sit outside on our balcony all of the time. Like when I'm awake, I'm on my balcony. And I was just looking up at the stars. And there was one star in particular that it felt like I could reach out and touch it. Like that's how close it felt to me. And then all of a sudden I felt this overwhelming feeling of home. And it's like, okay, this is what it feels like to be home. And then I thought, I wonder what star that is. I looked it up on the little app, and it was Arcturus. So for me, that was a sign that, hello, I'm from Arcturus. And so from then I started connecting with Arcturians. And even now I still channel and connect with Arcturians a lot. And it was kind of that confirmation of just that feeling of home that I got. But then I kind of got caught up in this label of being an Arcturian starseed. And I was kind of gently reminded that as humans, we really need to label everything. And I also, at this point, I had no idea where our souls were from. I was like, wait, so my soul is from this planet. Like, I didn't really know that source was a thing. So from here, I started channeling the Arcturians a lot. And one day I went to channel them and the Syrians came in. And then I realized that I also have connections to Sirius. And it's just an example of how easily these things can come in and out. And it's up to us to discern whether or not we feel connected to them or not.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying before, where to pay attention to how you feel, because that's exactly what you did. You first discovered it based on how you were feeling. You were aware of the sensations that were happening in your body, in your heart, and you were able to discern from there, what home was for you. And I'm very similar, just like you, where growing up, I always felt a little bit different. I was the girl that did love to talk a lot, so that really hasn't changed. But good thing we have a podcast. But I remember being in high school and being in the cafeteria. And if any of my high school friends happen upon this episode at some point in time, I know you'll remember this and you'll most likely agree with me. I would sit there with my headphones and my sketchbook, and they would all be having conversations. And I just was always in my own little world, never feeling really, truly a part of this one. Not that I was consciously trying to separate myself from it, but I just felt it was better to kind of distance myself because it just never felt like home for me. Even at family reunions, I would be reading a book. I wouldn't really be interacting with people. I'd rather be in the water or, sitting down by a tree. I never really, I guess it goes back to that old saying, the older the soul, the deeper the cave. And it's very easy for me to go into that cave. I can go pretty deep in there, especially with my Alma the Scorpio in my astrological chart. I have no problem going deep and, going going there alone.
I feel the Scorpio, the deepness of Scorpio. Pluto was in Scorpio. Your Pluto's probably in Scorpio too, because
my sun, my Pluto, my Mercury.
My rising is in. So it's like first house is your identity.
See, mine's such an interesting balance because those are all in the fifth house, which is ruled by Leo. The introspection and the investigative parts and going deep into like the darker parts of human nature can kind of come out in like my art. And that's what I used to sketch. It's so funny. Like I used to sketch like, eyes with tears in them and like just like very, very emotional stuff.
Very Scorpio-esque.
Right? It's just this mysterious, who's that girl that's with her friends, but's always wearing the headphones and not actually interacting, but she's sitting there like she's part of the group. But I was always just kind of on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Arcturus, which for those that don't know is in the constellation Bootes, Bootes. Also, during my hunt for where I came from, I had another reading because at that point, when this was all happening to me, I remember telling you this too, that I just wanted readings from other people. I didn't trust myself enough yet. So I was finding validation through someone else, which was, I look back on it now and I'm okay that I did that. I think I needed that at the time because it actually verified a lot of things that I was feeling internally. So last year, I had another reading with a beautiful intergalactic channeler named Layla Rahana, and the beings speaking through her were able to give me some insight into why I have been able to see symbols in the sky with my physical eyes since my awakening or energetic upgrade, we can call it. And by symbols, when I say symbols, and I've said this in past episodes too, when I say that I see symbols, I mean that I visually see with my physical eyes clusters of circles within circles. They kind of look like crop circles, variations of lines that could be compared to looking like runes, actually. And I see energy moving. It looks like thousands of neurons or even atoms in the sky just moving fast towards each other as if they're firing off, almost like electricity in the air. And then I also see sparks of light spontaneously with this. And so I'm seeing all this with my eyes open. It's not something that I can really escape. It's just a part of my life now. So, and I love it. So in the reading, I was told that I chose Andromeda and Arcturus as a location many times. And I'll tell you something. I just learned about star seeds, same as you, Brianna. I didn't even know any of these places existed. I didn't know what any of this meant. So basically the beings told me through this channel, through Layla, that in Andromeda, I explored the themes of flow of information through geometry or sound harmonics, but in a visual centered way. Also assisting in construction of portals from many dimensions and particular dimensions that allowed other beings to travel to different locations within different star systems, which I thought was pretty cool. And then as an Arcturian, I had a very strong connection to patterns of light and to sacred geometry, even healing or manipulating patterns of light in order to create something new, to transform energy. So I took this soul theme of sound harmonics through visualization, through construction to create a portal from Andromeda, and then with the Arcturian energy of being able to transmit and create new forms of geometry in order to heal or assist in the ascension of physicality. So these themes are very awakened within my soul. And I'm sure you're wondering, and I did the same thing when you go to get a reading with someone else, you wonder, how do I know what this person's saying is actually true? So, and I can tell you that for me personally, I'm a highly visual person in this incarnation. This has been a fact since birth. And this also mirrors my work as a visual artist. So I talk about my experiences with light in more detail a lot in last week's episode, including how I often see light symbols and sacred geometry in that space between wake and asleep. More often when I am just waking up and the light show continues behind my eyes, even when I go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, further showing me that this is real. So it shows up a lot very physically for me. And as for how portals show up, my body is literally a portal whenever I put brush to canvas. I'm constantly channeling different worlds, dimensions, and energies through the vibration of color. And let's not forget that, because I haven't forgotten, as I mentioned in prior episodes, that I also see these symbols in the sky with my physical eyes. So that's not being in a meditative state. It's just literally whenever I look outside, wherever there's daylight. So there's that connection with light again. These have all been very strong confirmations for me. It's simply, and how I can explain it is that it's simply that I'm meeting that dimension of me within my soul who has done this many times before. So even though I'm living on earth now, my soul continues to expand in other dimensions. So I'm accessing those soul fragments because, as we spoke of earlier, time doesn't exist the way we believe it does. So the more I call these soul fragments that I have in the multiverse home, the more these abilities, really these remembrances, activate within me. So I just want to say that with all of the past lives, it would have been very easy for me to sort of blow them all off as fantasy or fiction. However, I couldn't deny it. I still can't deny it. These people knew nothing about me. They'd never met me. They were telling me things that corroborated what the other reader said, and none of these people knew each other. Not to mention that it would be unreasonable for me to deny something when I can physically see it. There's really no escape. I have no excuse to not believe it. I actually have the proof for myself. I see it with my own eyes. So it's not as if there's someone telling me what to see. I'm still sovereign in that ability, which I think is very important, where I'm not relying solely on someone else to tell me this about myself. I have the proof within myself because I see it physically. And I also see it in my dreams. So I think that's why I think it's very important to also just trust yourself with these past lives.
Trusting yourself is number one. It really is the most important thing that you can do in this work.
I also want to mention one thing that, because I think it's important based on everything we've talked about, that when this new ethereal world really began to open up for me, I became obsessed with knowing my soul's origin. I know Brianna talked about it a little bit at the beginning, and it was the same for me. Where I was from, the lives I have lived, I wanted to know everything, and I still do. But you could say that I went down the rabbit hole hard. I followed that white rabbit way down, way down that hole. And the deeper I dove, the more distracted I actually became from my own multidimensionality and the divine, the innate gifts that I brought into this timeline now. It becomes easier to distract from the present, the here and the now. It can feel like cosmic overwhelm when you begin to learn too much, too fast, and there's no integration. And I realize now that my conditioning, my programming was a major influence, as we're taught in this third dimensional realm, this perception of needing to be validated by lineage, by ancestry. So it makes a lot of sense why a lot of us, we just want to know where we're from because we place such a large importance on it in this earthly realm. This is how we're conditioned. And in July of last year, in 2020, when I started forming a conscious connection with my guides, I channeled something that I'm going to share with you because it definitely, well, in all honesty, it didn't put things into perspective right away because I still had this deep desire to know where I was from. But looking back on it now, it makes so much sense to me. And I feel a lot more at peace with it. And this is what they said. They said, when trying to discover who you are, it is not unlike a puzzle with 65,000 pieces. One unique piece for every life your soul has lived, scattered across the cosmos in different timelines, dimensions, star systems, and planets. This life is a constant discovery. That is why we continue to say, be here now. You are already in 65,000 other places, and this one Earth life is too short to find all of the pieces. And I thought that was beautiful. And it goes back to the example you gave earlier, Brianna, about the plate. So we've got these pieces all over the place, and to try to find them all and to glue them back together to make a plate, this life is just not long enough for that. While we're trying to put that plate together, we're going to be missing out on all the magic that's actually happening around us. Thank you for listening. If you are enjoying what you are hearing, please remember to subscribe, like, and leave a review. Let's get back to the show.
I really want to talk about ways that we can work with our past lives too. Right now I have a lot of past life fears coming up. I want to say collectively, a lot of people are also feeling fear, which could just be from the collective fear that you're feeling, but it also could be from past lives that you have experienced, and the state of the world right now is kind of triggering those past life fears. So right now, in those moments where I'm feeling fear, I think I mentioned this last week, maybe, where I have been repeating the mantra that fear is an illusion. And so that's totally my favorite mantra. And I'll do a little connection, and then I ask, where is this fear coming from? And for me, a lot of my fears have come from past lives. And so the beautiful thing is that if you can change your past lives, you can change your current life and your future life, and you really can change your reality.
How do we change our past lives, Brianna?
Oh, it's so beautiful. Like I keep on getting shown and told, and I just am constantly receiving the message that this life right now is a life to heal. Like one of my main jobs for incarnating is to clear my karma and heal anything that I experienced in these past lives. I actually heal past lives in when I do readings for people too. So what I do is I get quiet and I ask for a meditation, and I can guide myself or others through a meditation and see a past life that's being affected. So what I do is I kind of will get out of the way and I ask my guides for a meditation, and they will show me a past life, and then we can work through it and call on our angels and our spirit guides and our teams to kind of clear and move that energy out and replace it, or not really replace it, but kind of embrace it and allow it to be a part of you, to kind of create that oneness within yourself. A past life that I know a lot of people have experienced is one where you have been persecuted for speaking your truth. I recently had an experience with one of my friends, Lauren, from Open to Alchemy. And through her readings, she actually saw a past life where I was imprisoned, and it was like I was chained and I was being chained to the wall and I couldn't get out, and I was imprisoned for being a witch. And for me, that feels like I was just imprisoned for being different, being powerful, being who I am, and thinking for myself. And I know right now it's really triggering for me to kind of start doing the same and in this life now, and I feel a lot of fear around it. And the message that I received from her was to imagine that the shackles were plants, and think of how easily you can just like rip or break a plant off. Like if my shackles were made out of thin leaves, that's crazy. I can really easily rip them off, which goes to show you too about our perception. If I'm in a cell shackled and I'm looking down, and it's up to me what I'm seeing. If I'm seeing metal and metal shackles that I can't get out of, I'm not going to get out. And if I look down and I can see plants, and then hello, I'm just going to rip the shackles off and walk out. So in my meditation, I went back and I ripped my plant shackles off, and then the bars were like vines. So I just like moved the vines out of the way and I stepped through them. And this fear that I have of just speaking my truth and being more of my authentic self has kind of really fallen away. I was openly talking to one of my neighbors today about aliens, and I didn't care what they thought about me. I just like told them all about aliens, and then I just left and like went on with my day. And before, I wouldn't have done that, or I would have told them about aliens, and then I would have been like second guessing everything that I was saying. So it's in those moments where you can go to the past and you can clear a fear. And now from me clearing that fear, I'm also clearing that energy from manifesting in the future. So I'm clearing this fear of being persecuted for speaking my truth. And I'm really clearing that from ever happening again. So I'm not manifesting it because I'm no longer matching that frequency. I'm matching the frequency of someone who is powerful and is in charge of what they are seeing, what they're creating, and what they're experiencing.
Everything you said definitely resonated with me because I have past lives as well where I was silenced as well for speaking my truth. And I've seen a past life where I was accused of being a witch and I was hung, and it makes a lot of sense going into this life too, because my mom would tell me that I came out of the womb speaking. And I suppose it's because I was suppressed for so long in other lives that even as a child, before I was conditioned and programmed to be silent, that was my first nature. It was just innate for me to want to say everything in case I wasn't able to, in the future. And this definitely wasn't a conscious thing. It obviously was a karmic, more of a karmic relationship. And so I definitely understand what you're saying about healing past lives. In all honesty, it's something I need to work on a little bit more, because it's one thing to discover what your past lives are, but it's another thing entirely to heal. I did a reading for someone last week, and the message came through for them through me that healing is not an event, it's a process. So sometimes we believe that if we do something one time, if we do something to heal ourselves one time, that's it, it's done. And then we get triggered again and we wonder why it's still coming up. We thought we had dealt with it, but that's kind of the beauty of expansion and growth, is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's a continual healing. I mean, sometimes it's continuous triggers and memories from these past lives that end up showing up in this life or manifesting in this life. So if you're experiencing that yourself, we both send you so much love and understanding, because we're definitely there ourselves. I don't think the work ever really ends. And just know, though, that it is possible. Like Brianna said, it is possible to clear old karmic patterns and old karmic loops. It may take a little bit of earth time, the way that we perceive it on earth, but it is possible, because in the multidimensional realm, it's a lot faster sometimes than we think.
Yeah, and healing's not linear either. I love that. People really think healing has a beginning and an end. And it's an ongoing.
Unfortunately, I find that that's how it's marketed right now in our world, that it's come to this workshop and you'll be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
You won't have to think about it ever again. It's done. And then, we're on this high from it. And then something happens and we almost, it brings us back. It kind of catapults us back into depression. And then we feel guilty that we're still feeling this way, and we feel ashamed. And there's no shame in any of that. This takes a lot of work. And if you've had many lives, and you're carrying a lot of energetic baggage from these lives, it's going to take some time to unload those bags.
Mm-hmm. For me, the fear that I've been working through a fear for about over a year. And the more there's been so many past lives tied to this fear. And the more I work through them and change them and shift them, the easier the fear is, and like the anxiety subsides even more. But it's like similar to how we can hold on to these past life fears, we also can hold on to our past life gifts. And that's something that we can bring into our lives now. So like, Steph, you were a fairy in a past life. Think of all this amazing like fairy wisdom that you have that you can share. And like just kind of like that lightness and that air to situations.
Yes, even the gift of being able to see these symbols in order to transmit healing is I'm very grateful that even though sometimes it overloads my senses a little bit, I'm very grateful for the fact that I've accessed this soul fragment of myself that's still existing in these other star systems that are basically allowing me to see what I see.
Mm-hmm. And think of all the people who are incarnating right now that are holding that, like the crystalline knowledge from Atlantis. And it's crazy because you can see it. You can see the people that are holding it and that are carrying it and that are here to heal and that are here to just kind of give us a little upgrade.
For anyone that has come to this podcast and has listened to me describe that vision earlier in Atlantis with the dragon and the crystalline column, if you think that you were one of those beings and that vision resonated with you, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you, because clearly we're supposed to meet again. Mm-hmm. We would love to meet you.
Yeah, we are here for a reason. We have stuff to do.
Yes, and we'd love to connect with you. So please reach out to us if anything that I said resonated.
And if you're curious about your past life gifts, you can ask for them to be opened up, and you can ask to be shown them too. So then that way you can really harness them and cultivate them in your life now.
Yes, and I'd say don't be attached to the way it might show up for you. It might show up visually, it might show up as a knowing, it might show up through someone else, through a reading with someone else. I would say don't limit yourself. It might even show up if you use a pendulum or you use oracle cards. I don't think when you use these sort of tools that they're looking outside of yourself, because you're the one holding, the oracle cards or the pendulum. So you're actually infusing it with your own energy. So it's just an extension of you, essentially, of your energetic field. So I would say that there's so many ways to just be open to how this information can show up for you. And once again, the reminder to write things down, because it's so important. And then you can go back and kind of fact check for yourself and cross-reference things, and to pay attention to how you feel. Because your body is such a great communicator. And a lot of the times, most of us do not actually listen to what our bodies are trying to tell us. And they said, yeah, right. Your body sends signals all the time.
And I was also thinking it can show up in ways that are a little less magical too. Like, that's very true. one of my favorite examples is, like, let's say you really want to go get a coffee, and you go to the coffee shop, and then you meet someone at the coffee shop, and then that's how you receive that information. So say, I really want a latte. And then you go get your latte. The person is giving you a latte. And then they're like, wow, you're a really good writer or something. And then you're like, maybe you should start writing more. Like, it can really be as simple as that.
When you set that intention to want to learn more about your gifts, your soul gifts and abilities, I mean, the universe will then magnetize to you the people, places, resources, and things that are needed to help you activate that and to help you uncover your soul's history. It's all there for us. It's always available for us. It's just a matter of taking that first step and walking through the door and just allowing whatever happens to happen.
Yeah.
Non-attachment, I found, is such a big thing.
Non-attachment is so,
and I still struggle. I won't even lie.
I don't know why.
Like, I ain't even gonna lie, I still struggle with that non-attachment to the outcome of, a reading, or trying to figure out more about my soul's gifts and abilities. And yeah, definitely, I think that's
we're taught and programmed that we need to know the outcome of things. Like, you're taught that, like, you need to go to school and you need to go to college and you need to get a job. Like, you need to do this, and then that's your future. But that's really not it. Not everyone needs to go to school. Not everyone needs to get a job. Like, it's whatever, it manifests in magical ways.
Another thing too that I found, especially kind of cross-referencing all my own notes and my own readings for my past lives for confirmations, is that a lot of it will be what already lights you up. If something really, really interests you, like for us, aliens, wow, that was kind of a giveaway that, maybe there's something more to this. If you like looking at the stars at night and you've been drawn to the sky for as long as you can remember, you love astrology, you love ancient Egypt, you love airplanes, you love teaching, you love being a guide. These are things you truly, truly enjoy on a deep soul level. They just bring you so much joy and you're passionate about them. Like, for me, it's art. And I've also learned I have past lives where I was an artist in these different realms. You'll notice that there's little clues everywhere. You just, like I said earlier, you just got to pay attention. It's there. I mean, just keep following what lights you up.
Yeah, that's one of the simplest ways to find your past life connections. It's just, what do you enjoy doing?
The simplest answers are the truest answers for us. Sometimes we don't need to dress it up with pretty words and magical circumstances, because really everything is magic. even just the fact that we're alive, that our bodies can breathe without even thinking about it is magic. Your whole existence is magic. You are stardust. It's magic. I think just going forward, when you're discovering this for yourself, just continue to remain open.
Mm-hmm.
It'll show up for you in the way that it's meant to, at the time that it's meant to. If you keep setting that intention and putting that out in your vibrational fields, you'll attract and you'll magnetize the resources that your soul has lined up for you at that moment in time to discover more of who you are.
Yeah. And just remember that we really are one, and our present moment is just a flash in the grand scheme of our soul's history. Steph and I decided to do a joint card pull again this week. And it's kind of funny now that I'm looking at the cards that I pulled, because the intention that I set was just what information do I need to get across for those of you who are listening. So all the cards I pulled, I think, were really great. The first one that I pulled was transformation. Things are changing at a cellular level, deep healing. And for me, this message is really, the cards that I pulled are totally like a past life message. Just remember that this is what is happening right now in this moment. You are experiencing what you're experiencing for this deep healing. And it's really a reminder that we can change. Like, we can change our DNA. We can change our energetic cells within our body, and to kind of just move energy, let go of what's not serving us, and just kind of level up. The next card I pulled is Trust the Niggle. What is the niggling feeling trying to tell you? And that kind of coincides with what Steph was saying about where are your passions, what lights you up. Like, really trust that feeling that you get inside, and really just act on like the messages that you're getting or those feelings that you're getting. And it's totally okay. It's okay to like sit in those moments of, hey, I think I had a past life in Egypt, and then meditate and connect with it and see what it is and what you can learn from it. And you can always ask, where is the growth in this? What is my soul trying to learn? And the other two cards I pulled fell out very quickly and very early on when I was shuffling the deck. And I pulled Lumeria and the Pleiades. And I think those cards just came out because if you're listening to this and if you're wondering if you have a connection with Lumeria or if you have a connection with the Pleiades, this is like your sign that, hey, you do. And it's like, trust it, and you can explore it and see what gifts you have from those lifetimes there that you can cultivate and bring into your life now.
I love that, because I've also had lives there. I've lived everywhere. Apparently, that's what I've been told, and I feel it.
Yeah, I feel that too. And Lumeria has been coming up for me a lot lately too.
That's actually why, when you said earlier how you started identifying as an Arcturian starseed, it's the same with me. I don't even know what to identify it as anymore, because I've been so many different things. I'm one with all, because I've lived all those lives. Yeah. So it's just, it's such a human concept to want to narrow it down because of our programming about lineage and how that defines us in this lifetime. But in the galactic sense, it doesn't define us, because different star systems have beings from other star systems, that have, I guess we could say, immigrated there. So it's, I mean, it's so funny how you hear that saying one world, but it's like one multiverse, one universe. We're all one. It doesn't really matter. I mean,
just one.
one multiverse, one people, really, like
one ring to rule them all. I love Lord of the Rings.
I love Lord of the Rings, and I was just thinking about Marvel, of course, and the Avengers and all the Infinity Stones, because there's always truth to all of these movies. I'm telling you, and all these stories. So for my card, I pulled the I only pulled one card. No other cards fell out, but now I see why, because Brianna got all the cards that fell out. Otherwise, we would have ended up having 10 cards to talk about this week. And mine was get grounded, empaths, highly sensitives, and connect with nature. And then when I received this, it reminded me that we need to be clear channels in order to tap into these other lives that we've had and to not take on the energy of others, including taking on the energy of others from other lifetimes, past soul contracts we've made with other people that we've carried into this lifetime. We didn't talk about that very much in this episode, but that's definitely an episode for a later date.
Yeah, karma.
Yes, it's because a lot of karma, it's your relationships with other people. So, and the soul contracts that you've made. So for this, when you feel as if a connection that you have, whether it's positive or negative in this lifetime with someone else, it's very important to get yourself grounded so that you can clear your energetic field, and which also helps you because the earth stores all of our history of all of our incarnations. So getting grounded and connecting with the earth also allows us to tap into these other lives that we've had. Especially for me, for example, that fairy angelic energy is definitely helpful. Being in nature, the element of light and my history as a particle of light and seeing light, around flowers, it's very important to get out in nature. So I think this really helps. This will help everyone because when you're grounded, you're able to integrate all of this information that you're receiving about your past lives. And I think I mentioned this earlier because it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole. So if you find that you're doing that and it's becoming so overwhelming, and to try to figure out where am I from, what past lives do I have, what are my past lives connection, I would say just take a deep breath and go put your feet on the earth and get yourself grounded. And I wish honestly that I had done that more during that time, because I think it really would have been very supportive for me.
I remember that coming up in your reading the first reading that I did with you was I was like, put your hands in dirt.
Yes, you did. Because when I was accessing all these past lives and beginning to see symbols and auras again, accessing these soul gifts and abilities, I wasn't giving that time for integration. I was becoming so spacey, really. I was becoming like, I was spacing out, and I was forgetting that I'm still in a physical body on a physical earth, and my body needed time to catch up with the energetics of all of these soul fragments. So it wore me down. And yes, definitely hugging a tree, putting your hands on the earth definitely helped. And you know what? If you have a history, especially because the earth stores our histories, you might actually find that doing this will actually bring up past life memories for yourself.
And I also love that was like a direct message for me as well. I keep on being told to like get back into nature and really cultivate that connection that I have with her.
I actually pulled this card for myself 3 days ago, so it's just also a reminder for myself. That's how it works.
Yeah.
See?
All right, guys, come on. We're getting into nature.
See what we mean? Sometimes it's just so simple, like pulling a tarot card a couple times in a row.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that message gets across. We've definitely shared a lot today, and I hope that some of it resonated. And as always, with all the information we shared, take what resonates and leave the rest. And going into the week ahead, perhaps pay a little bit more attention to what lights you up, what certain things you're interested in, what books catch your eye, and maybe what movies you're drawn to, what stories you find fascinating, and start writing them down and kind of see where it goes from there, because you never know a week from now, a month from now, even a year from now, because once again, time isn't linear. You might find that these were all clues that your soul was dropping for you along the way, along this path towards your remembrance. And on that note, grab that pen, get into the week ahead, and enjoy the energies. And remember to please put your hands in that dirt, hug that tree, walk barefoot on that grass, and get some light codes from the sun. And remember also that there's magic even in the mundane, even in the simplest things. And you, our beautiful listeners, are stardust wrapped in an earthly body. You are the magic. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we'll see you next week.